Warm greetings from Panama to Johannesburg. I feel deeply honored to join you, even if it's virtually, and really hope this very brief presentation contribute to inform the transcendent discussion you are having today. Far from providing you with answers to your concerns about the great challenge of renewing the social compact in South Africa, what I would do in the following minutes is to share with you some reflections based on the lessons learned and the good practices I can take from my experience, both participating and leading national dialogue processes in my country with different hats as Minister of States and chair of the National Consultation for Development, a dialogue space created by law in which are represented 23 different sectors of society, but also as civil society in a post-COVID context and as an advisor of similar processes from the academia. And let me begin by giving some wider context to the situation you are living currently in South Africa. I think it's important to acknowledge that we are at an historical inflection point globally. The wide array of interlocking crises threatening the stability of our polities, the well-being of our people, and the future of our planet are a clear evidence that our social contract is broken around the world. And these cracks in the social contract are doors to arbitrariness, abuse of powers, both enormous barriers to meet our own and real demands as a society. And when a social contract is broken, we have no direction and no common narrative as a country. We lose the possibility to trust each other and the chance of dreaming together and shaping together a common destiny. Challenges such as unemployment, inequality, environmental degradation, social fragmentation, political polarization, corruption are all symptoms of a broken social compact and outdated economic systems that have prioritized financial gains of a few at the expense of people and planet. However, the good news is that moments of crisis can often serve as opportunities for change, but this won't happen by itself. We need to turn the challenge and the crisis into an opportunity for change. And the challenge goes way beyond fixing a broken compact. We need urgently to completely transform our economic systems. Rather than trying to rebuild an outdated system, we must build a better one by reimagining our social norms and addressing the underlying structural flaws. Transforming the economic systems is a highly complex challenge, characterized by high uncertainty regarding what will actually work, high disagreement on what should be done, emergent outcomes, both positive and negative, feedback loops, unpredictability, unclear cause and effect relationships, and more. And this applies for your context, to my context, and to many other countries in the world at the same time. And this begins by a fundamental shift in the mindset, strategy, and execution relative to more linear problem-solving approaches typically employed in addressing well-defined bounded problems where cause and effect are well understood. And as I mentioned before, South Africa, as in Panama, we are in times in which juncture meets structure. And hence a major challenge when reviewing, revisiting, and reframing our social compact is being able to distinguish between the symptoms and the root causes of the problems we're facing today, as well as separating the urgent from the important, to then identify short, medium, and long-term commitments and solutions that need to be implemented. And let me use an example that might be familiar to most of you. The 2030 Agenda, adopted in 2015 by countries around the world, have played a critical role in creating a common aspiration for the future, one that is more just, sustainable, and prosperous for all. However, each of the SDGs addresses different symptoms, not causes of our challenges. However, due to the interlinkages among them, it is essential to redefine our social compact and implement structural reforms in order to be able to deliver. And dialogue is the only way forward. It's not the best, it's not an option. I must say, based on my experience and my convictions, that dialogue a way broad dialogue, inclusive, participative, is the only way forward. In this regard, I will share some main takeaways of my experience leading and participating from national dialogues, trying to reach a better social compact for everyone. And a first lesson is the importance of reaching an alignment, an agreement towards a common objective. Based on this, we can start crafting step by step our vision as a country, our own narrative as a country, that narrative that touches every single citizen, making them feel part of a same system, of a same structure. And in the case of Panama, the creation of the National Consultation for Development I referred to before was the result of a national referendum in 2006 to decide about the expansion of the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a main representation of our identity as Panamanians. So when discussing about the possibilities of expansion, which was one of the biggest in January projects in the world by that time, this led to a major discussion about how the gains from the canal should be invested to be a more prosperous and inclusive society. And this is just an example. We need to find something that makes us feel, that unites us around this, to align some visions and objectives in a very cracked and divided society. A second very relevant recommendation is to make a dialogue, the process for reviewing and rebuilding our social compact, as inclusive as possible, with a special eye on minorities and historically excluded groups. Definitely preparing all the documents, laws, even the constitution that can come out of a process like this requires some special capacities and academic formation. But to brainstorm about how do we need to put this together, we require the greatest participation possible within a country. And inclusiveness also means seating the real power, formal or informal, at the table, especially those on a privileged position that benefit from a broken contract. And this is a main challenge when trying to craft a process to renew and to reestablish the social compact. A third point would be to ensure representativeness and legitimacy. And this is a very sensitive point that implies a call to all sectors of society to organize themselves, not only to choose who can or will represent them in a process of this nature, but what are the mechanisms to report back and to enable decision making. Next, I would say building trust is also essential. And for this, the figure of and the role of a facilitator is key. A facilitator that is recognized from all sectors of society and that gains that respect to facilitate a major process like this is important. But also, for building trust, it's important to have the humility and the individual and collective mea culpa, considering that we all have some degree of responsibility with the reality we're living within, but also the capacity to contribute to the solutions of our national challenges. And in some specific context, concrete agreements or commitments from government ahead of the dialogue can help start building this trust. Then I would say it is essential to agree in advance on the methodology, the agenda, the length of the dialogue, and to establish a qualified technical secretariat to support the whole process, providing evidence and all the supportive materials that you would need to make the decisions based on the evidence, beyond on the impressions that the different participants of a dialogue may have. And in this sense, doing your best to keep a systemic approach to the challenges we are facing is also key. A systemic approach that integrates the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of the challenges we are facing instead of approaching them as separated issues is one of the challenges we have right now. and trying to introduce this approach and this view as part of this dialogue is also a recommendation I would do and I would make based on my recent experience. Also being transparent and keeping the country informed, keeping the different sectors represented in the dialogue, but also the larger community informed of the advances, of the challenges faced in a periodic way is also important. And I would say an essential part of this process of building trust when the lack of trust is the norm in most of our countries. And despite the lack of credibility in governments, I would say it is way much better to have the government on the table rather than not having it. If possible, it would be good to have all the different branches of government on the table and also having all the political parties represented. And I know this brings the political dimension to all this discussion, but we live in a political world. And if we try to reach to agreements without considering and bringing them into the table, the execution of these agreements, the materialization of this social compact might be way more difficult than by having them on the table. And this will also contribute to the continuity and the sustainability and the viability of the agreements reached by a process of dialogue. Another suggestion would be to take advantage of technology to increase and ensure participation. We just had a great experience in Panama through a technological platform that enabled a massive participation from all the regions and all sectors of society without precedence. And I'll be happy to share with you some more details about this last process we experienced a year ago. With any of you interested in learning more about this. I'm not doing this now because I'm conscious of time, but I'll be happy to engage with you in a conversation and a discussion in the different aspects we're touching today, and any previous experience, either from my country or other countries I've had the chance to work with that might be useful for you, understanding that there are no one size fits all, and this must be an internal process that is unique for every country. However, the methodology, the technical part, the structural part of these exercises are things that can be reviewed and take into consideration based on other experiences. Finally, I would say to keep the dialogue as an ongoing mechanism to address national issues beyond today's immediate challenges, and keep this dialogue space as with a monitoring system to keep accountability throughout time, throughout the different government terms, and across the different sectors of society to make sure that we agree on how our social compact should look like, but we also continue and make sure that we implement the reforms, the rules that makes this become a reality. And I'll conclude this brief intervention with a final reflection. Instead of focusing on what others need to do, I think a great starting point would be start by identifying what each of us can do by answering one initial question. In this historical inflection point, what role do I want to play? What are the decisions and actions that would lead to the desired systemic consequences? What are the type of organizations do we need to put in place and enable and constrain individual behavior to materialize the new social compact based on a shared vision? What are the main elements of a supportive ecosystem to enable and constrain organizational behavior? I would say I wish you all the best in this enormous but necessary challenge that you are taking on. And I hope soon I would be able to learn from your success, from your lessons learned, and from your best practices, because this is an ongoing process and you are on the right track by having this discussion. Thank you again for the invitation, and I'm really honored to have had the chance to participate with you from this important event. Thank you very much.